In the Quran, Islam is not a religion. Assalamu alaikum. I am Moses, and today we're going to talk about something that is absolutely fundamental, and that is the very term Islam, the very term Muslim, and after that the term Iman. What is Iman and who is a mu'min? This is what we will be talking about in the series Islam and Iman. And today we're going to realize that this term Islam of the Quran is vastly different from the word Islam that is also used for this man-made religion that we find everywhere around us. So, ma huwa al-Islam, man huwa al-Muslim. These are the two primary and fundamental questions that we're going to start with the exploration of as we kick off this series. In the very beginning of the video, I said Salamun alaikum. What does it actually mean? What does it really mean? And as I said before, these terms that we seem to take for granted really, Islam, Muslim, Salam, we all seem to think we know the answers, but do we really? Do we really all agree and understand, if we were to put hands on our hearts, do we actually know what is the Islam of the Quran? Does it mean submission to Allah? Or is it saying those two shahadatain? That there is one Allah and I believe that Muhammad was his messenger, those two testimonies. Is it peace? If it's peace, how does it connect to submission? And if it is submission, well, how does it connect to you believing certain things in your heart? Let's just have a quick look. So for those people, and I used to be one of those way back when I was a Sunni Muslim, we would say, well, Islam means peace. Yeah, sure, that means peace. But if we are being honest to ourselves, if it is peace, is it specific to just a group of people? Can a Christian, somebody who believes in the Trinity, somebody who promotes the Trinity, let's say he's a cardinal, this cardinal here, or he's a pope, does that person have the capability? Does that person have the capability to be a Muslim? Can that person, because he's spreading peace, doing salam, works of salam, is he a Muslim? Well, what about a Shia? What about an Ahmadi? Now this term is very contentious in its own right, especially in the subcontinent. But can this person be a Muslim? What about a mulhid? Someone who denies, or someone who knows in his mind that there is no God, that there is no creator. Someone who says that, or even someone who is an agnostic, or an atheist, or a mulhid, or even an ex-Muslim. Those guys, if they are doing acts of peace, are they doing acts of salam and thus they are in Islam? Because they're doing peace, aren't they? What about a Hindu? So these are questions that I would say make you think. Well, they made me think, if I'm being very honest, because you start off with an assumption, and that's something that we always heard. Well, Islam is peace. Sure, Islam means peace. But in reality, the answers aren't as simple. Well, what is it then? Is it submission to Allah and His Messenger? Now again, when we say the Rasul, the assumption is that we're talking about one specific person 1400 years ago. Well, then the question is, from a linguistics perspective, why are you calling it Islam here? Why are you not calling it Istislam? Istislam would be a better, if we were to follow your linguistics and follow your understandings of the Arabic language, why are we not calling it Istislam? That there is submission to something or somebody, Istislam, and that would be to Allah and His Messenger. Well, we're not calling it Istislam, not yet, we're calling it Islam. So what is Islam then? Well, is it the Aqidah? The Aqidah. Is it the Aqidah, the fount of all knowledge, the foundation that rests on these two shahadatain, the testimonies, the two dual testimonies of faith, where you give testimony that there is Allah, He is the creator. You need to give evidence, you need to give testimony for the creator, as if He is waiting for you to acknowledge Him. You give that testimony, and then you have to give the testimony that there was a person called Muhammad 1400 years ago who was the messenger of Allah, who you never saw, who you never heard from. But those two are supposed to be the two pillars upon which this Aqidah sits, and their Aqidah is what makes you a Muslim. Very basic questions arise if we are to continue to hold on to this, I would say, false belief. Where in the Quran? Where in the Quran does Allah demand us that we hold stuff in our minds so we become Muslims and we succeed as that? On that note, where is this term Aqidah in the Quran? There is no mention of that. In fact, what's really surprising is that the more you read the Quran, the more you realize how much the emphasis is on what you do, ما تعملون, ما يعملون, instead of what you believe, ما يعتقدون. At the top of my head, I cannot recall ayat of the Quran where there is talk of reward because of things that you hold in your mind, things that you believe, things that you want to, for whatever reason, store in your brain. That is not what Allah is asking us to do in the Quran. And again, those shahadatain, there is absolutely no presence of them in the Quran. There is none. Neither of those two are expected from a Muslim or anybody to be believing in or professing as far as the Quran is concerned. So this is a reminder before we really get this series started. It is a series. It is going to be a series. This is the first video of the series. So I'm not going to be able to cover everything, of course. And there will be, and there might be questions. Well, in fact, there will be questions at the end of this video where some of those questions I will raise that I want to cover as the series goes on. And some of you would be asking to clarify certain things. And I would just say, give me time to go through with the series. And hopefully at the end, we will have live sessions where I would very much like to discuss these two concepts, these two terms in the Quran and how we have been grossly misunderstanding them over the last 1200 years. So today, all we're doing is we're talking about the foundations. We're laying down the groundwork upon which we're going to build as the series goes on. We're going to start with Islam and Muslim, but we're going to go on and we're going to talk about Iman, which is the real thing that I wanted to always explore further. What is the concept of Iman in the Quran? Who is a mu'min in the Quran? And some really particular questions like, who are the mu'minun and who are the ya ayyuhalladhina amanu? And what happens to all of those ahkam, all of those orders and all of those practices that were meant to be done by Allah, ya ayyuhalladhina amanu? Do they apply to us, etc. or not? Things like the siyam, the roza, the fasting. So all of those will come, but at the appropriate time. Let's return to the foundations. I think in between all of this talk about what is Islam, who is a Muslim, I think the most important question is the one that's not asked. And that is Islam something that you do within yourself? As in you say something, or you believe something, or you store certain information in your heart, in your mind? Or is Islam something that you do to others? What is Islam in the Quran? Well, let's start with this question. I would like us to start building a very solid foundation based on some very simple Arabic concepts. In Arabic, verbs, af'al, they fall into two main categories. And those two categories are what we find in English as well. Either we have al-af'al al-lazima, intransitive verbs, or we have transitive verbs, al-af'al al-muta'addiyah. And before we go any further, I would like to give a special thanks to Dr. Muhandis Khalid Sayyid Hassan from Syria, who has done a tremendous work on explaining in real basic terms al-af'al al-muta'addiyah or transitive verbs in the Quran. Let's come back to the topic. So what are intransitive verbs? And I don't want to make this very boring, and I'm going to give examples, but I just want to make sure I cover this. So intransitive verbs are those verbs, and that is true in English as is true in Arabic. Intransitive verbs are states or actions that happen directly or within somebody. They don't affect something else. For example, hazina, he became sad. So the action is happening in a localized way within oneself. So you experience something within yourself. But as a contrast, transitive verbs or af'al muta'addiyah, they require an object or maf'ul. How do we make verbs transitive? So for example, he became sad to he's making somebody sad. In Arabic, we add a hamza to the beginning. So hazina was he became sad. If I want to say he made somebody sad, I would add a hamza at the very beginning and the verb would become ahzana. He made someone else sad. So hazina, he became sad, is an intransitive verb. You're feeling, experiencing something within yourself, but then the moment we add the hamza in the very beginning, the orientation of the verb changes completely. It becomes a transitive verb. It becomes muta'addi, and now the action is happening on something or somebody else. So ahzana, he made someone else sad. Let's look at a few more examples, because these are what we're going to use to build an understanding of what linguistically Islam is, and then we are going to see if that meaning actually holds in the Quran or not. So there's another very popular verb that we use all of the time. Qaruba, qaruba, he got close. Now if I wanted to say he gets close, mudara, or in present, I would say yaqrubu, he gets close. Thus he is close, qareeb. So qareeb is someone who is close. Now all of this is happening, as I said before, the person is doing this thing to himself or within himself, etc. It's a localized, it's an intransitive action. But if I wanted to make this as a transitive verb, or a fi'al al-muta'addi, as in something is happening on others, we add the hamza and qaruba becomes aqraba. He brought something closer. Aqraba, he brought something closer. Yuqribu, he brings something closer. By the way, I'm going to give you a hint because we're going to talk about this more. But if you want to start paying attention from now, listen to the way I'm saying these words. Listen to the awzan, the wazns, the morphemes, the sounds. Because these sounds, these ways of making verbs, of making words in Arabic is what really makes it stand apart from all of the other languages that at least I speak or know. There is a specific format in which these words are derived. These verbs are constructed. And based upon this binya, based upon this construction, we understand how this language works. So he brought something closer, aqraba. He brings something closer, yuqribu. And if you are the active participle or the fa'il or the doer of this action, you are muqrib. Muqrib. The masdar or the verbal noun of this is iqrab, bringing something closer or causing nearness. Let's look at another one, a very popular verb, specifically in Urdu. And if you've ever followed Urdu poetry or even Arabic poetry, huzn, hazin, these are words we find there all the time. Hazina, he became sad. Yahzanu, he becomes sad. Hazin, thus he is sad. So these are intransitive verbs. To make them a transitive verb, al-fa'al al-muta'addi, he does this action on others. Ahzana, he made someone sad. Yuhzinu, he makes someone sad. The fa'il or the active participle, the doer, is muhzin. I'm really asking you once more, by the way, to pay attention to the sounds of the words. Yuqrib, muqrib. Yuhsin, muhzin. The masdar, the verbal noun or the doing part, is ihzan. Ihzan. Iqrab, ihzan. What and who is a Muslim then? We are going to do something really simple. And I really would like to say that this is not something that requires someone to have a great understanding of Arabic grammar, because these are really basic concepts. What we talked about, we are now going to apply the very same principle of Arabic awzan and morphemes on salima, which is where we all know and agree, from where we derive Muslim and Islam. So the intransitive verb is salima. He felt peace. He was in a state of no conflict or harmony. Salima. If this is happening in the present tense, yaslamu. He feels peace, state of no conflict, harmony. Thus he is salim. So a salim is somebody who feels peace, who is in a state of no conflict or harmony. He is okay wherever he is. If we wish to make this a transitive verb, as in the person is doing this action on others, what does it become then? He caused, gave peace or harmony, aslama. He causes, gives peace or harmony, yuslimu. The doer, the fa'il, the active participle is a Muslim. And the verbal noun, the masdar, is Islam. So Islam causing peace and harmony, a state where no harm is being offered. And the doer of that is a Muslim. And the Muslim is somebody who's doing this Islam. Did it sound too simple? Did it sound too straightforward? Before we go any further, I don't want to rush through this because I really think this is such a simple concept, but this very simple understanding is completely tainted. If you ever do research on Salima and all of the mushtaqat from this, what you find is taint of the fiqh, of the hadith, of the mustalahat and istalahat fi sharia, wa ma ila dhalik. But if we were to return to the very simple Arabic principles, what we have said is sound Arabic, and There is no one who can go and deny what we've talked about. And to prove the point and how these awzan are the same awzan that are used for all of these verbs, we're going to do a quick review session before we go any further and look at it from a Quranic perspective in particular. So here's a little table in which I've got those 3 verbs and their 2 different states. So whether they're in their state of intransitiveness or transitiveness, al-af'al al-lazima, al-af'al al-muta'addiya. So qaruba, hazina, salima. So if we quickly go through the intransitive, because they're not really our point of concern, but I want to make sure the principle applies there as well. So qaruba, it is qaruba in madi, it is yaqrubu, mudari', hazina, yahzanu, salima, yaslumu. Let's talk about the transitive verbs or the transitive forms of these. So qaruba is aqraba, hazina is ahzana, salima is aslama in the past. In the present tense, if you are doing this action in the present tense to somebody else or something else, qaruba becomes yuqribu. He is getting something closer. He is causing something to get closer. Qaruba yuqribu. Hazina yuhzinu. Salima yuslimu. And if you are doing these verbs, the active participle, the ismul fa'il, is muqribun. Muqrib for qaruba. He is muhzin for hazina, and he is muslim for salima. And if you're doing these actions, the doing part, the verbal noun is, if we're talking about qaruba, it is iqrab, iqrab. If it's hazina, it's ihzan. If it's salima, it's islam. Iqrab, to bring closer. Ihzan, to cause sadness. Islam, to cause peace or state where there's no harm being offered. There's no rocket science in there. There's absolutely no rocket science in there. If we can divorce ourselves from what the fiqh says, from what the hadith says, from what all of those millions upon millions of books have been written that talk about what's Islam and Aqidah, etc. So if we ignore all of that, we return to the very simple basic principles and guidelines of the Arabic language, there is no doubt what this verb means. There is absolutely no doubt of the mushtaqat or the derivatives that we derive, just like we do for every other verb in Arabic. Muslim is somebody who is causing peace. He is offering a state where there is no harm being done. He is living in harmony. He is causing harmony with others. He is offering no war. He is offering no bloodshed. He is the opposite of someone who does harb, who does qital with you. Islam is the verbal noun for the state where you're not causing harm, where you're causing peace. Before we go any further, if there are already questions that are bubbling up and you want to just shout out at me, but that's not the Islam we know. Yes, I know. But the Islam that you and I have known is not the Islam of the Quran. When we've talked about this personally plenty of times before. Plenty of times. And there's a lot of research out there. The Islam that we have heard about is the man-made religion, is the man-made faith, carved about 1200 years ago, perfected in its current state, cocooned in this current state about 1200 years ago. Linguistically, so far, this is where we have talked about. We find no connection here so far to any religion. Where's religion coming from here? There are no tuqus, there are no practices, there are no rituals that we've talked about. There are no certain things that we have discovered so far that you must say before we start making someone feel peaceful. But you might say, but the Quran uses the term Islam surely the way the ulama do. No, they do not. And the Quran does not. And we'll talk about this very soon. But Akhi Musa, the Aqidah ya Akhi. All I will say, this whole talk of Aqidah, this is completely non-Quranic. This is not Quranic. What you believe, what you hold in your heart or in your mind, whatever is in your memory banks, has got nothing to do with what you do. The Quran is about what you do, not about what you say or what you want to think about in your mind. And again, if there are still questions about, but Akhi, brother, the tradition, the history, the forefathers, aba'una, kutubuhum, our aslaf, etc., etc. As I said before, I've talked about this personally before. I'm really bored, and I'm not interested in going through all of this again. I get tired. I have never seen an end to these debates. If you are interested in what the Quran says, then you're more than welcome to follow the evidence and judge the evidence on its merits. But if you want to bring about all of those things, then I'm honestly not interested. All we do on this channel is we look at what the Quran says, how the Quran uses a term, how the Quran utilizes this term within itself, and that's all we hold ourselves to. We're not interested in any other viewpoint that has been tainted by human-made sources and by human inclinations. We're really not interested in that. And if you are by the way more interested, I did a video on methodology of the Quran. Maybe refer to that to see why this is not something that I'm absolutely at all interested in. So to recap, before we go any further, linguistically so far, Muslim is one who causes peace and harmony. He offers no harm. A Muslim is, by the way, he's seen doing Islam. Seen doing Islam. If you believe something, but you don't do something, I have no evidence that you even believe it. So by doing something that corresponds to this expectation is what makes me say you are the doer of that action. So it is something that you are doing. Similarly, Islam is the causing, spreading of peace, and harmony is the state where no harm is being offered. Again, it's a visible state. It's not about internal beliefs. If you say that you are peaceful at your heart and you want that peace for others, but your actions belie that, then no matter what you say, your words have no value. What we all see is the action. If it's a violent state that you express, you are not following Islam. It's really simple. It's really basic. There's no debate there. Now, we're going to see if this meaning that we have understood linguistically holds true within the Quran as well or not. And I'll remind once more, this is the first video in a series where we will continue to talk about a lot of the different ayat in greater detail. The intent, once more in this video, is to lay the foundations that upon which we're going to build as time goes on, inshallah. So a Muslim is the opposite of a mujrim. Allah gives us in the Quran a counterexample for a Muslim. So what is a Muslim is contrasted by someone who is not. أَفَنَجْعَلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ كَالْمُجْرِمِينَ. Should we treat those who spread peace, harmony, offer no conflict, as those who do wrong things? Mujrim. Again, this is a term that even if you don't explore into great detail, we understand this quite well in at least 3 languages that I can think of right now. And because this is a verb, this is a term that's spread throughout our cultures. So mujrim is someone who's doing wrong things, who is doing wrong things, not someone who is believing certain things or saying certain things. Just because he's got a certain idea doesn't make him a mujrim. A mujrim is someone who does wrong acts. And the opposite of that is a Muslim. That is how the Quran contrasts between these 2 types of people, between these 2 types of behaviors that are outwardly expressed, that are visible, that can be judged, that can be seen. The Quran says something really interesting about who a Muslim is as well, or someone who's doing the act of Aslama. Islam really starts with one's own self. Bala. من أسلم وجهه لله وهو محسن فله أجره عند ربه ولا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. Indeed, whoever aligns his orientation in peace, for in sync with Allah, his qawaneen, while doing good, will receive his reward with his Lord, and they will have nothing to fear, nor will they grieve. Whoever aligns his orientation in peace, Bala man aslama wajhahu lillah. Whoever fixes his orientation, whatever he does in all of his manifestations, he is performing this action for the sake of Allah, for the sake of being in harmony with what the qawaneen, what the laws of Allah expects from him, and his being in this particular state. For then for him is his reward with his Rabb, and there's going to be no fear upon them, and they will be not in a state of being sad. This is what the Quran is saying really clearly about what is expected from each and every one of us. Each and every one of us. Whatever we do in our orientation, whatever we do when we set this up and we treat with the world outside, If this is set up correctly, if it's optimized, if it's set up in the correct orientation, then we have a reward with Allah. Did you, by the way, notice before I go any further, any talk about any specific religion or any specific rituals that you have to perform in order to become this person? No. Once more, we all really need to align our orientations. فَإِنْ حَاجُّوكَ فَقُلْ أَسْلَمْتُ وَجْهِيَ لِلَّهِ وَمَنِ اتَّبَعَنِي وَقُلْ لِلَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ وَالْأُمِّيِّينَ أَأَسْلَمْتُمْ فَإِنْ أَسْلَمُوا فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا فَإِنْ أَسْلَمُوا فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا وَإِنْ تَوَلَّوْا فَإِنَّمَا عَلَيْكَ الْبَلَاغُ وَاللَّهُ بَصِيرٌ بِالْعِبَادِ. If they argue with you, say, I have aligned my being in peace harmony towards Allah, as have those who follow me. And say to those who were given the Al-Kitab and the Ummiyin, if they too maintain peace, فَإِنْ أَسْلَمُوا, then they have indeed found guidance. فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا فَإِنْ أَسْلَمُوا فَقَدْ اهْتَدَوْا. If they too maintain peace, then they have indeed found guidance. But if they turn away, your responsibility is only to deliver the message clearly. Allah sees His servants clearly. Many a time we have heard that the only religion that's accepted by Allah is the Islam that was carved 1200 years ago. This appropriation of the term Islam by this man-made religion is where everything goes wrong. But once more, if we return to what the Quran says and how it uses its own terms, we find something specifically different. When Allah talks about the only sanctioned way, the only way that He prefers and wants, that is not a religion where you have to say two statements of faith, but that is the state of non-violence that you must be in. Inna deen indallah al-Islam. Inna deena indallahi al-Islam. The right system with Allah is Islam, the state of being peaceful, offering no conflict. That is the system. That is the expectation of Allah from us. That is the state in which He wants us all to be in. It is not, unlike what we are told, the state where we're offering rituals for the sake of earning hasanat and ajr. If we recited a single letter of the Quran, that's 10 hasanat. We did 2 more, that's 20 more. We've earned 30. This is not a gamified system that we're playing. This is not a us versus them. Because we were born in a specific type of a family, then we are the ones who continue to accumulate these benefits, and everybody else who ended up being in a different religion, well, that doesn't apply to them. No, that's not what the Quran says. Inna deena indallahi al-Islam. The right system with Allah is Islam, state of being peaceful, offering no conflict. And this is the same principle that we talked about at the very beginning. Linguistically, what we have found so far from a linguistic perspective is what is in harmony with how the Quran uses this verb. If we continue on once more, the only right way is for us to harmonize with Allah. And when we say Allah, we're really talking about His laws. And by the way, if you are interested, why am I using His laws here when I talk about Allah, I would encourage you to watch the video that I did maybe about 6 months ago about how we do dua. And when we say dua, are we really, well, we're not really raising our hands and we're asking, we're uttering magic phrases in order to get help from Allah, but we invoke the system that Allah has set up, His laws, His qawaneen, the namus of the kawn. That is what we do, and that is how we interact with Allah. That is how we engage Allah's help. أَفَغَيْرَ دِينِ اللَّهِ يَبْغُونَ وَلَهُ أَسْلَمَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ طَوْعًا وَكَرْهًا وَإِلَيْهِ يُرْجَعُونَ. Do they seek a way, system other than Allah's, when everything in the heavens and the earth has already aligned itself in harmony with Him, either willingly or by compulsion? And to Him they will all return. And there are reminders from some really key personalities in the Quran that we must remain in the state of being a peace giver. Not in a specific state of a man who believes in a religion, but in the state of one who gives peace, who remains in a state of non-conflict with others. وَوَصَّى بِهَا إِبْرَاهِيمُ بَنِيهِ وَيَعْقُوبُ يَا بَنِيَّ إِنَّ اللَّهَ اصْطَفَى لَكُمُ الدِّينَ فَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. Ibrahim advised, I'll say for now, sons, as did Yaqub, my sons, Allah has chosen for you this way of life system, ad-deen. So do not cease giving peace and harmony, remaining aligned until your final moment. Do not cease giving peace and harmony. وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. Ibrahim and Yaqub were in no way whatsoever saying two statements of faith or one statement of faith or however many statements of faith. This is an act that these people are suggesting their followers to perform. But that when you pass away, when your time comes, make sure that what counts for you is your state of being a peace giver, a person who remained in a state of non-conflict with others. This ayah is crystallizing the point that we've talked about so far. Only the peaceful path is accepted by Allah. وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَنْ يُقْبَلُ مِنْهُ وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. If anyone seeks a system other than offering peace and harmony, Islam, it will not be accepted from him. He will be one of the losers in the end. So there's some food for thought here. If you call yourself Muslim because you said certain magic words in Arabic, if you did certain rituals, you went up and down 5 times a day, you stopped yourself from eating food certain times throughout the year, but all of your actions were against the state of being in peace with others. You cheated others. You stole things. You pirated software. You attacked your neighboring countries once you were in power. You were not fair to your employees. You cheated your wife. You were not a good parent. You're not in a state of harmony with people around you, things around you. And yet you call yourself a Muslim. Well, as far as the Quran is concerned, are you really a Muslim? Are you the one who's saying something but not doing something, expecting that what you say is what is expected? And if that is how you want to live, that's your choice. But for those who are watching from the outside, those who can understand this is, and there's an ibrah for all of us here. Saying something, believing something is not at all what the Quran is talking about. It is what you are doing. If you are seeking a system where there is no peace, there's no harmony, you're going to cheat people, well, no matter what you say, you're not a Muslim. You're not on the path of Al-Islam. And a reminder from the Quran of what we should never be. وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنِ افْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبِ وَهُوَ يُدْعَى إِلَى الْإِسْلَامِ وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Who would be more wrong than someone who invents lies against Allah when called towards spreading peace? Allah does not guide the wrongdoers. Who could be worse than a person when he is called to stop his violence, to return to the state of being peaceful with himself, with others, with those around him? But he says, no, that is not what Allah says. But Allah says that we have to do these certain practices for us to become Muslims. That we must say this sentence, we must utter these magical phrases in order for us to become Muslims or remain in Islam. Who is worse than a person like this? Who is worse? وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنِ افْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبِ. He is being called towards a state of being peaceful, and yet he says, no, that is not what Allah says. Allah says, because as far as, so long as I say these, so long as I respect these people, so long I read these things for the intention of earning thawab, then that's all that is required from me. That person is lying. That person is making up a lie upon Allah, and there's no one that is more zalim, more of a wrongdoer than that person. Wallahu la yahdi al-qawma al-zalimin. Allah does not guide the wrongdoers. He does not guide them because they themselves refuse to accept that guidance. When that guidance comes through to them with these ayat of Allah, and yet instead of listening to them, he wants to hold on to the books of people that people wrote, that we don't even know if they are the actual authors of them. If he wants to hold on to those beliefs, but on top of that, he continues to invent lies upon Allah. And for him, from his perspective, whatever Allah says is something, but whatever those people say, that is what is going to follow. Well, he is himself choosing the path of the wrongdoers, and he is one of the worst people. Let's not be that person. We are approaching the end of the first video of the series. I'd like to give a little bit of a flavor, a bit of a taste of what is going to come in the series. So as I said in the very beginning, just on the topic of Islam and Muslim, there are a few more ayat that I would like to talk about. And once I've talked about these things on the right hand side, I will return, because it is a series. It might go on for months, it might go on for years, I don't know. But I like to keep coming back to this series and to these really key terms. What I'd like to talk about next though is Iman. What is Iman? Is Iman believing things, just like Islam is? If I believe that there's an Allah, if I believe that there are messengers, if I believe in the Al-Ghaib, if I believe in the Kutub, if I believe in all of this, then I become a mu'min. Now, some of those will probably separate this a little bit or have a more nuanced explanation to say, yeah, you believe, but then you also to do something. That's what a mu'min is. But is that what really the Quran says? What does it actually mean about believing in Allah? What do you understand? How do you actually use that belief system to help you? What does it mean by belief in the Malaika, mathalan, for example, or in the Kutub, or in the Ghaib? So this Iman, for me in particular, was a topic, was a key term that I grappled with for quite a long time, and I couldn't really understand some of the finer nuances of this, and I would really like to talk about this. So there's some specific topics that have always puzzled me. Like, for example, number one, why is Iman considered to be being in a higher state than being in Islam? Why is a mu'min better than a Muslim? What is the difference between them if both of them are believing, right? If you believe, you say those shahadatain, you become a Muslim, what's the difference between that and a mu'min? Why is Allah called a mu'min? That is a question to which I read, I don't know, innumerable explanations for. But why is Allah called the mu'min? He doesn't believe in himself, does he? He doesn't believe in me. Astaghfirullah. Why is Allah calling himself the mu'min then? Why is the Rasul who obviously, by the very definition, he believed in his messenger, why is the Rasul being asked to do amanu? Is he being asked to believe the messenger? Then again, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, why are they being asked to believe? If by definition they have believed, then why is the Quran asking them to believe again? Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu aminu. Why? Then again, on the very same point, who are these people? Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Are they people who have long gone? I have heard some interpretations where people have said, well, these are people who no longer apply, who no longer live with us. They were people before Nabi Muhammad, and mu'min is what is left with us. Alladhina amanu, they were before us, they did their actions in the past. All of those ahkam in the Quran that were revealed for them, they no longer apply to us because they were from a different millah, they were from a different deen, they were on a different system, etc., etc. But is that really what the Quran says? I would beg to differ, and I would like to talk more about that, because that, in my understanding, is not what the Quran is saying. Again, what really happens to the non-Muslims, the non-mu'min then, right? So, as we've already seen, I think the few ayat we've seen should really wake us up. If someone is a Muslim because of what they do, does that apply to a mu'min as well? Someone who does something. But then where does that leave all of those people who obviously are not what we today call Muslims? What about this Christian, this young Christian Japanese boy who met with an evangelical in Tokyo and he ended up becoming a Christian? What happens to him? What happens to a mulhid, one who did not believe in the presence of Allah, who did not accept the Creator? What about a ex-Muslim who continues to do acts of Islam? All of those questions I would like to talk about more. I argue that these two terms, or the mushtaqat, the derivatives from these two verbs, salima wa amina, once understood correctly per the Quran, they shatter, they destroy the framework of the traditional religion that they also dare to call Islam. What we really end up finding in the Quran is a very different message, way more universal in its practice and its appeal than this rituals-laden religion that we find ourselves staring at. So I would like to cover the aftermath and we get deeper into this series. And also, because I know I've been getting a lot of those questions, what about the siyam of the Quran? What are they? What is Ramadan? Do we have to do these fasts of not eating and not drinking, etc., etc.? Well, we will talk about that, but remember, the ayat start with Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. So whatever these are, these orders are being given to those who were doing iman. So once we understand who those people are, even if I don't talk about the siyam in detail, I think it will be very clear as to how we can understand those orders. So again, I'd like to talk about this as the series goes on. Our final ayah of the video, our final ayah for today. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا, not وَاعْتَقَدَ الْأَشْيَاءَ الصَّحِيحَةَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. And who is better in speech than one who invites to Allah's systems, laws, does good deeds, وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا, and declares, indeed, I am among those who offer peace and harmony, Muslimin. Until the next video, Assalamu alaikum.